Hello and welcome to Ep.3 of Breaking Shan podcast. Today we have our final teacher that we'll be interviewing. His name is Mr. Tinkler. We've mentioned him previously a few times. So let's get in and start asking him because we're very excited because there's one question that is very special because somebody will be taking over, but we don't know and we'll find out. So thank you for joining me, Mr. Tinkler. How are you feeling today?
Well, thank you for having me. I'm feeling wonderful today, Zishan.
All right. So we have some set of questions set it up for you. A few of them is about your career and retirement, and then the rest is some fun questions for you that we'll ask you just to get to know the fun part of teacher life of you. All right. So starting with our first question. Could you please introduce yourself and just share a bit about your teaching background and how long you've been in education?
My name is Ethan Tinkler. When I was in high school, I wasn't a very good student. Both my parents had been English majors, so I did grow up hearing English spoken properly, and I learned to speak proper English, and they made me read all the time. So when it came time to do writing assignments in school, I was always very good at that because I knew what it was supposed to look like when it was done, but I had no real interest in much of anything academically. The only reason I really went to college was because my father told me I was going to go to college. I didn't really know what I wanted to do. At first, I was a music major because that's the only thing I could think of that I wanted to study, and I found out fairly quickly that it wasn't for me. I still play music, I still love music, but being a music major was not going to be my path. And I went to Westchester, and Westchester is a little like Stockton, in that a lot of people who graduate from Westchester and Stockton become teachers.
Okay.
So before I went, anytime I told somebody I was going to Westchester, they would say, "Oh, are you going to be a teacher?" So the idea was already there. And, at first the answer was no, absolutely not. I had no interest in being a teacher. So after I was a music major, I changed my major a couple of times, and I was thinking about dropping out. And a friend of mine gave me an essay to look over that he had written for an English class. And it was pretty bad.
Okay.
And I thought, well, maybe I can do that. And, I helped him out with his essay, and I decided to go into English education because that's something that I felt that I could be helpful with.
Wow. So in total, how long you've been teaching here?
Here at Atlantic City High School, I've been teaching for 23 years. For 3 years before this, I was at the Atlanta County Alternative High School, and then there was another partial year that I taught at a different high school. So a total of 27-ish years altogether.
27. Okay. That's pretty impressive, actually. What made you want to become a teacher? Well, you said, you went to Westchester and, you weren't really sure, but because of the essays and the reading, the English, is that what the main part taught you?
Yes, that's, that, and I always liked stories, like I said, my parents made me read a lot when I was younger, and from the time I was in probably elementary school, but especially in junior high school, I would just start writing these stories just because I liked writing. And so reading, writing, stories, all of it kind of goes together.
So what subjects do you teach here currently?
I teach English.3 and creative writing.
Creative writing. So that's an elective here, right?
That is an elective.
English.3 academic or?
Academic.
How is it with the students?
I like it. There are pros and cons of any level. One thing that doesn't always happen in the academic classes, I would like there to be a little bit more discussion. But in general, I like the academic students.
What kept you inspired over these years in this field?
Students, actually, one of the things that I'll miss about teaching is just seeing, working with young people. Working with
Yeah.
young people really keeps me feeling younger. I don't feel 56. It seems impossible to me that I could be 56. But working around young people kind of keeps me feeling young and inspired.
That's great. If the teachers enjoy time with the students, that's what should keep them moving on. What's one thing students taught you over these years?
One thing that I try to remember, and I think a lot of us as teachers try to remember, although sometimes we forget, is what it's like to be a high school student, what it's like to be 16. I mean, for me now, that was 40 years ago. I'm a much different person now than I was then. My priorities were different. The way I react to situations is different. So now, looking at a class full of students, I try not to dismiss a student's reaction to something that I feel is not important, because to that student it's very important. And remembering what it was like is pretty important, because if you don't remember what it was like, then it can be kind of a little bit of a battle.
Do you think other teachers should use or learn as well from their students?
Absolutely. And I think most of us do. It seems there are some people who either have forgotten what it's like to be 16 or 17 or 15. Or maybe they were just the kind of kid who was just always really into school. I don't know. I mean, I wasn't, a good student. I wasn't really that into my education.
You said that you were a bad student. Were you bad with school work, or is it bad with behavioral?
Not really behavior, although, I was the quiet kid who tried to just not get called on and just be invisible through the day and get through the day and go home. I didn't do a lot of homework. I was smart enough that I could get away without doing a lot of homework, just pay attention in class. But it's just, the classwork I didn't really do. I was an absolutely horrible math student. I couldn't get away with,
But you made it here.
I made it. But yeah, my math grades were not good. I struggled with
So you're
math.
retiring in this year of June, right?
Correct.
And so how do you feel?
I feel like it's the right time to go.
Yeah, that's good. What will you miss most about being part of the school community?
Well, as I've said before, the thing I'll miss most, I think, is just working with students, meeting. Your students are people, young people. They're individuals, and meeting someone like you, for instance, who, this is an interesting thing. This is a lot of fun. And to meet somebody who has their own interests and their own passions, and to see what they're excited about, that's really great. I'll miss that. And I'll miss the opportunity to kind of interact with students outside the classroom. We haven't done a play in a long time here, but when we used to do plays, I always played bass for the music. And working with students in that kind of a situation is a little bit something different. You see another side of them, they see another side of you.
What are you most looking forward to in your retirement?
I'm looking forward to finally devoting time to some things that I've been putting off for a long time. I've always been a musician. I'm an okay musician, but I'd like to be a good musician. And that's not really going to happen if I'm here, 5 days a week trying to.
What do you play?
I play mainly bass, upright bass and electric bass, some guitar as well.
That's great. If your classroom had a theme song, what would it be?
Probably the theme from Sanford and Son, an old TV show from the 70s.
Why did you choose that?
It was written by the great Quincy Jones, and it's just a fun song. It's a mix of blues and funk, and it's just a great entrance kind of song.
That's good. If you had a chance to teach a fictional or made-up subject, what would you choose?
Probably the life and times of Zishan Bakhtiar.
Why did you choose that one?
Because I think it would be pretty fascinating.
Okay, all right. If you could swap your job with anyone in the school, who would you choose and why that person? For a day.
For a day, maybe you, maybe Zishan. I would like to go through the day to see what Zishan's day is like.
Yeah?
That would be fun, I think.
Okay. All right. Well, you are my teacher. You know me. If your teaching journey was to be made into a movie, what would you title?
Probably, this is very exhausting.
Yeah? Why that?
It's a tiring job. I used to have a terrible time falling asleep. And I didn't start teaching till I was in my 30s. And as soon as I started teaching, I never had any trouble falling asleep ever again. I was just tired. It's a tiring job, believe it or not.
Yeah. I mean, you have to wake up in the morning, and usually teachers have to wake up, more earlier than students because some teachers live far. How long is your drive to school?
It's only about 25 minutes.
Okay. Well, mine's like 15, so 25. But okay. If your classroom could have its own mascot or a sidekick animal, what would that be and what would it represent?
Maybe a phoenix, the mythological bird that bursts into flames. Just because I think sometimes it would be interesting just to have something burst into flames in the classroom.
I mean, if you don't have lights on, that would be a nice,
it would.
That would be some good lighting.
And, the symbolism of rising up, from the ashes.
Of course. So you said you're retiring, you have an elective called creative writing. Somebody has to take over. Who do you think might take over for your creative writing class? Because there are so many English teachers in this building, but not all of them can teach creative writing because of either their scheduling or they're not qualified for it. Who do you think would take over?
Ideally, I think Mr. Curtin. Mr. Curtin's a young teacher here, and he, interestingly enough, was in my creative writing class. He was my student for 3 years.
Oh, wow.
And he was just a wonderful, person and student, and a great writer. And he went on to take some creative writing classes at Stockton. And I think he'll do a fantastic job.
How do you think the process is between you and him right now for him to transition into this class? Is it easy for him and you to explain to him?
I don't know that it will be easy. I mean, they say in any class, the first 3 years, it takes you about 3 years to kind of get yourself together. And I found that to be true. So it'll take him a little bit of time, but I think he'll do well at it. And I have been kind of giving him some advice.
Okay. What's your go-to snack or drink to get you through a busy school day?
At school is kind of the one time I can kind of control what I eat and don't eat. So I try not to really snack during the day, just ice water. Well, I have lunch, of course, but I don't really do too much snacking here. That's at home.
Ice water.
Water. Keep hydrated.
Okay. If you could have one superpower to use only at the school, what would it be and how would you use it?
I would have to say invisibility. To be able to be invisible. Because if I'm walking down the hall and I see you, and I think, oh Lord, I don't want to talk to Zishan. That's not true, but invisibility is true. There are certain, maybe administrators or colleagues who, if at the time I didn't really want to talk to them, you could just become invisible.
Of course. What is one classroom item or tool you can never live without?
I usually use a screen of some sort, but I try not to rely too much on technology,
Yeah.
because it's just pencil and paper is kind of my go-to for most stuff.
How was your transition from old school into modern technology? Because you've been here for 27 years in this field. Pretty sure technology wasn't used that much back then, or wasn't even there.
Yeah, when I started, the idea of each kid having a laptop or computer was just science fiction.
Yeah.
But that we were starting to have like a classroom computer in
Yeah.
the classes that we would use for research or whatever. It has changed a lot, and I think I've been able to keep up. Right now, though, with things like AI and AI detectors and how rapidly AI is becoming better,
Yeah.
I'm glad that will not be my problem.
Yeah. I mean, you're out.
Yeah.
You don't have to worry about all that extra checking and detecting yourself. If you had unlimited time and budget, how would you redecorate your dream classroom?
I think I'd probably make it like a room in somebody's house. I mean, we try to make our classrooms inviting to students, but still, at the end of the day, it's the cinder block walls, the tile floors, the drop ceilings, and it looks very classroom-like.
Yeah.
But if it could look like a room in somebody's house, it might be a little bit more relaxing, and you can just talk about stories and things.
All right. Can you recall a moment with a student that made you truly proud or touched your heart?
Yes, teaching a lot of times is sort of a thankless job. We're not really often told by our students if we've made a difference or whatever. But last year there was a student who I had for creative writing 2 times. She did not sign up for creative writing the first time. She was kind of placed in the class and wound up loving it because she had a lot of problems, a lot of baggage that she was able to write about.
Yeah.
And I helped her out with some things. And before she graduated, she told me how much my help had meant, and that was very touching.
That's amazing. For a student to come back to the teacher and say thank you is a big part for a teacher. If you could invite a public figure or a celebrity to speak to your students, who would that be?
Stephen King, I think. Stephen King is one of the writers who inspired me to want to tell stories. He's one of the writers that I read a lot when I was in high school, and I still, admire him as a writer. And I think it would be great to.
I mean, it'll make sense too because it's a creative writing class.
Exactly.
It's all about writing. He's a writer. Looking back, is there one school year that stood out the most fun, challenging, or meaningful to you?
Challenging, absolutely. Those 2, there was the year that we were out for COVID.
Yeah.
And we were, if you recall,
I was in 8th grade at that time.
Okay.
Everything was virtual.
Everything was virtual. We were using Go Guardian.
Yeah.
Every day you would wake up in the morning and have to reinvent your job.
Yeah.
That was a challenge. And the following year, trying to bring everybody back was also a challenge. There were days where teachers were teaching from school, even though everything was remote. They were trying to bring back kids, and there was half the students would come back on Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Half the students would come back on Tuesday. It was insane, and that really, if I could have left then, I probably would have. That was exhausting.
Yeah, that was a big year. I believe it was for about 1.5 years.
Yeah.
Because it started, our school district, they went virtual when I was in 7th grade in the month of March. And it was all year until 8th grade and 9th grade. We still had to wear masks and everything. It was tough for everyone to communicate, but now we're good. What's one school-related moment that still makes you laugh when you think about it?
A colleague of mine, Mr. Milton Berger, he used to always tell his students that this building used to have 3 floors and that it sunk enough that the first floor is underground. And there was an argument in my class one day, and I wasn't paying much attention until one of the students said, "Mr. Tinkler, isn't it true that this building used to have 3 floors?" And I said, "Who told you that, Mr. Miltenberger?" And they said yes. And I said, "Yes, it's absolutely true." So I was able to kind of keep that story going.
What's one thing you cannot live without on your day-to-day life besides school related?
Music, I think. I think we all have something that we need that takes our stresses away, and we can kind of get lost in.
Music. Yeah. Are you a coffee person? Because most teachers drink coffee to get through the day. Because it's hard sometimes for a teacher to communicate with more than 100 students each day.
Yes. Yeah. I do drink coffee every day.
Well, lastly, to our last question, what advice would you give to students that wants to become a teacher and current teachers with their first year? What would you give to both sides?
I would say that when you're a young teacher, if you're getting into education, is to get involved either in extracurricular activities like clubs or helping out with play. But it's also important to get involved with things, as boring as it might sound, as things like the union. So that way, the union is the group that kind of helps make sure teachers get the pay that they deserve.
Yeah.
Make sure that politicians are always trying to take away things like health benefits.
Yeah.
And the union is the group that kind of helps hang on to those things and make sure that teachers are being looked after. And if nobody goes into the union, and I mean we're all in the union, but if nobody becomes a union representative, for instance, then there will be nobody to fight for those things.
Yeah.
So getting involved in that is important too.
Isn't that somewhat related to casino employees as well?
There are a lot of groups. Casino employees have a union. Firefighters, policemen have unions. A lot of carpenters, iron workers. There are a lot of unions for specific
I didn't know
groups.
teachers had it either, or all these other jobs that you mentioned. I only heard about the casino ones, but that's great. Well, this brings us to the end. Thank you, Mr. Tinkler, for your time and effort you made to come here today. I did take some of your prep time, but good thing we're on time. You'll have some time to relax.
Well, thanks for having me. This was a lot of fun.
Well, everyone, that'll be it for today's episode. We have other guests scheduled as well, and they're amazing teachers and probably some other jobs as well, which is in this building. So we'll bring this to you. Stay tuned. Until next time, see you. Have a great day.